Welcome to An Unconventional Life, a podcast where we share stories about the crazy 1% out there who earned their doctoral degrees and then went on to use them in crazy, cool, unique, and unconventional ways. Here's your host, astrophysicist turned teacher, author, dissertation coach, and more, Dr. Russell Strickland.
Hi, this is Dr. Russell Strickland, host of An Unconventional Life podcast, and today I am welcoming Dr. Seth François. Dr. François has, there's a lot of things we're going to talk about. He earned his doctoral degree, his DBA at Walden University, which is my old stomping grounds. I used to be a faculty member there. He's currently working as an adjunct professor, and also is a consultant for his own company, Imaginetainment, which is just super interesting. We talked a little bit about that. I can't wait to include you guys in on that conversation. So looking forward to speaking with Dr. François. But first, I'd like to remind you guys that today's episode has been brought to you by Dissertation Done, or will be brought to you by Dissertation Done. If you are a adult doctoral student, you're working on your dissertation, you're about to get to your dissertation, you're struggling through your dissertation, why don't you reach out and give us a call. Reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/done. We'll set up a call to talk to you to see if you might be a good candidate for our Fast Track Your Dissertation coaching program. Our coaching students tend to graduate a good year or two sooner than their peers, so we'd love to see if that might be a good fit. And if by any chance you've already graduated, you're an expert out there looking to expand your authority, well, we have an Expand Your Authority author program where we take you from a blank page to being a published author. What better way to build your authority and show your expertise than by being able to say, not only am I a doctor, but I literally wrote the book on my area of expertise. To find out more about that, go to dissertationdone.com/book. Dr. François, hello, thank you, welcome.
Good morning, how are you?
I am doing very well today. Thank you so much. So we were talking just a little bit earlier before we went on air today about the fact that you were a DBA student. You earned your doctoral degree a few years ago from Walden University in the DBA program. What did you think of that experience? Tell me a little bit about what that was like for you.
First of all, Walden is an excellent school.
Yes.
I really feel like it's just an excellent school, and it really got me into the mode of really understanding that I didn't know much going through the dissertation.
Yeah.
And
well, I think I've shared this little quote with folks before, but I was a TA at the University of Chicago, and one of the professors there was teaching the science class for folks who aren't going to take science after that one. And we were talking, walking back from the class to our department, and somehow it came up that he said that an undergraduate professor's job is to teach those undergraduate students so they graduate knowing that they know everything. And a graduate professor's job is to teach those graduate students so they graduate realizing they know nothing. And I thought that was a really cool way of looking at it. Because when you really start to study, you know, there's so much out there. It's really true.
It's the process of getting your doctorate is first of all, I was at a fair. I was a union negotiator, and they were having some type of event, and Walden just happened to be set up in a booth, and we were set up in a booth, and you know, I started went over and I said, well, what about the program, and what about this, and the young lady was very nice, and she said, well, I'm going to have someone get in contact with you about it. And I really wasn't sure if I was going to go through it, but I followed through, and I went on, and I said, okay, this is something I'm going to go ahead and try. And little did I know that this would probably be the most challenging experience in my whole life. It takes really good concentration. It takes a lot of dedication, and you have to be open not to be right.
Yeah.
because
because I like to tell my students, the dissertation is not about being right or wrong. It's about getting your committee to be happy, basically getting your committee to accept your dissertation. That's what this is all about. So there are
Right.
things that you could do that are wrong, and most committees aren't going to accept those. But there's a lot of things you can do that are not right or wrong. It's just a question as to whether the committee is going to sign off on it or not.
Right. One of the things that I learned when I first got there, a couple of professors and a couple of students told me, they said to cooperate to graduate.
I like that one.
So
I like that one.
yeah,
The
well, you really don't want to get in arguments with your dissertation committee.
yeah, that's true.
I mean, you want to choose your battles, and you want. But the first thing I would recommend anyone that's getting into a dissertation program is to really research all the committee members and see if it's a good fit, because it is. I mean, it's like in human resources, there's a good job match and there's a good organizational match. And
Correct.
you have to make sure that doing a dissertation that it's both.
That you got that fit.
Choose
Right.
committee.
So it's a lot of students don't get that opportunity to really choose their committee members, but when you can, definitely take advantage. And the way that you choose your committee members, by the way, is you start off by deciding what is it you really want to do. A few students who are in our group, I call this, the podcast is an unconventional life, because I look at doctoral students in two major groups. The traditional doctoral student is like the 20-some-year-old kid who went from high school to college to graduate school, and they want to be a research professor. And then there's the unconventional doctoral student who is an adult, a real adult with more, like a mortgage and a family and a career, and all those sorts of things.
Right.
And when you have that going on, generally speaking, your dissertation is not really about the research specifically. It's more about getting you to that doctoral degree. And if the goal is to graduate as soon as possible, you need to make sure you're picking your committee with that goal in mind. Some of your committee members will think that this is just supposed to be a very long and drawn out process. And for me, that would be a disqualifying belief pattern if I was sort of interviewing committee members. I want people who think, yeah, you work on this, you get it done, we'll get you out the door and on to bigger and better things in life.
Yeah, there are, I mean, like organizations like yours is very important, just for guidance. Just beginning your dissertation and all phases. I mean, there's some universities that have 3 phases, 4 phases, 5 phases, whatever the case may be. But it's really good to really understand and have someone guide you, especially if the university doesn't have a template that you can go through and help you to decide. That's
one of those things where Walden's an absolute superstar. Those
right.
Templates and rubrics are awesome. Then it's a question as to how each committee member is going to apply those things. Is where the students can get in trouble.
Oh yes, I mean, but it's totally doable. But again, you have to really truly be dedicated to it. And not only do you have to be dedicated to the process, your family has to be dedicated to the process. There's a lot of people that go through it and they may not have a spouse after getting through a doctorate program.
It's definitely good that you're on the same page going into this, because it's going to take a certain amount of time. Yeah, absolutely.
And you also have to learn how to combine things. When I went to a meeting or went to the doctor's office, I always had my laptop, and when I was waiting, I was doing something for my dissertation. So it was always that opportunity when I took the wife to the store, I was in the car, typing away and researching and doing that. So there's ways to get around, the interaction, but also you have to have a balance, and it just can't be all dissertation. You have to have a work-life balance.
And I was going to say exactly that. You do whatever works for you, and that obviously worked for you. But I tend to advise our students to set aside a few hours a day, maybe in hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half in the evening, if that works for you. But make that a meeting time for you with yourself, and that's your dissertation time. And really, if you're focused and you're organized, 2 or 3 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, will get you to graduation in about a year or so, which is a breakneck pace for a lot of people. It takes them much longer than a year to get through the dissertation usually. But it's about that organization and compartmentalizing, making sure that when you're working on your dissertation, that's what you're doing. But if you're starting and stopping and trying to work on your dissertation whenever you have a minute, it can get to be very, very difficult. It's got to be, scheduled time, not found time. Like my coach says, I have a coach for my business, and that's one of the things she says is when you want to get something done, it's got to be scheduled. You can't just find the time or fit it in. It has to be scheduled. So that's something that I found that works really well.
Well, you said something very important. I mean, just like you schedule a meeting, you have to schedule your dissertation work. And not only just schedule it, have an idea of what you're going to do during that time period. Like if you're going to be researching a certain thing, or if you're going to be writing this section. And the other thing that I found that was useful for me is not looking at the dissertation as a whole document.
Mm-hmm.
It's really breaking it down into bite-sized morsels that you can consume at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll sometimes use that analogy with folks, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time. Okay.
That's right.
And what folks sometimes need help with is, what is a bite when you're talking about an elephant? So you got to figure out what the bite-sized piece is, and then which piece do I do first? Because that's important too. A lot of people look up at sort of Mount dissertation as this big, huge thing, and you're standing just looking straight up and slack-jawed, like, how am I ever going to get this thing started? And it's one step at a time. But knowing which step to take and which direction to go is really important too.
Right. I mean, even as simple as just trying to get that problem statement locked in.
Yeah.
And locked in right. I mean, that without a good problem statement, it's just, I mean, you can't even begin to work on it. Yeah.
Well, that's one I know, so I can tell that you're coming from Walden when you say that, because that's what they do. And that's one of those things where I would encourage folks to flip this around and do it kind of backwards from the way a lot of universities teach. If you first think about what you're actually going to do for your dissertation, and then worry about how you're going to present it later, I find that to be a lot easier, because one of the problems that a lot of students have is they're out there trying to write, and they're like, what am I writing? When you say you have writer's block, it generally means you don't know what you're doing. And that's okay for a student to not know what you're doing, as long as you say, I don't know what I'm doing yet, and I'm going to get there. That's okay. But as early as possible, we want to have a plan for that dissertation. And the plan needs to be, how am I going to get my data? What is it? What's that process going to look like? And there's a lot of details to it. So it's, when I talk to students, it's real easy. Who are you going to talk to? What are you going to ask them? And what are you going to do with their answers? Sounds super simple, but you've got to break it down. You got to know how to answer each of those questions very carefully. But once you've done that, now all of a sudden, as you're looking at stuff for your literature review, you know whether it fits with your project or not. It's very easy to throw stuff out or to know how you're going to use something. When you're thinking about that problem statement, which again, I know Walden likes you to do first. Well, if you know what you're going to be doing, then the problem you're solving is a little bit easier to articulate, versus if you start with that problem that you're solving, you don't know if you're going to actually be able to solve it or not, getting it done part. So I like to do that, to flip it around, to go backwards. And it takes a few weeks to do that backwards piece. But once you've done that, the problem statement, like I said, comes relatively easily. People can waste months trying to get their problem statement together.
Oh, yeah.
Without having that plan. So I think this is a more efficient way of getting it done.
Yes, I had to rework my problem statement several times.
Over and over and over.
Over and over and over again.
And it's like a half page, right?
Right.
Like, how hard is it to write a half page?
Yeah, and then you look at it and it's just all about simplifying it, trying to put it down in a very simple way, a very concise way, and so that the viewers can see exactly what you're trying to achieve. Yeah. But it just, for me, it was it was really creating the right environment to get through that, and that's having work teams. The
But tell me
people
about
that
that. When you said the right environment, what does that mean for you? Or what
well,
did that mean for you?
the right environment is having those people that creating that synergy
Okay.
from other students that are trying to achieve the same thing, that you can bounce off
Okay.
information and bounce off uh, uh,
How did
a
you do that?
thought
Because
or
I think what you're talking
idea.
about here is very, very important. How did you do that?
Well, it was great for me. I ended up getting with a class, and one of the first things that I did was I sent out an email and I said, look, this is
Hmm.
going to be a long process. Who would like to be in a work group? And
Okay.
so we had a couple of people that got together, and we actually went through the whole process for the most part until we started getting into our individual dissertation. We went through just getting through all the requirements of the classes and helping each other, bouncing things off on each other as
Okay.
far as our dissertations and things of that nature. And it worked out. It worked out really good. Now, the other part of that is having a space in your home, or even
Mhm.
like for
True.
me, it was Starbucks. I would go to Starbucks, get a cup of coffee, and sit there for a couple of hours and just work on my dissertation.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to give a plug to Starbucks, but yeah, they helped me out quite a bit. Or having a space in your home, just somewhere that you know that you can get a couple of hours uninterrupted, that you can turn your
Let's go
phone
back to
off.
Starbucks because a lot of people do, like to leave their home to get this done. Did you find that to be a productive environment, or did you find that to be a distraction for you? How did that work?
For me, once, and I use this term uh, called getting in the zone.
Okay.
Once I get in the zone and I write complete the first couple of sentences, I don't care if a truck is coming through the place. I'm
I know what you
zoned
mean.
in. And so that is a thing, is just getting in a place where you can get into that zone so that you
Yeah.
can get that focus. And sometimes it's just difficult, especially when you have children and you have
Yeah.
a spouse that it's really not. Uh, she really wants to spend time with you and really wants you to do things, and it's just kind of
Yeah.
sometimes you have to remove your place from the house just to get into the zone to get
just
your work done.
just to have that uninterrupted time. Yeah, if you have a family calendar, when I mentioned scheduling your dissertation time, that's a good way of letting folks know, hey, dad's working, or if it's mom's working, whatever it might be. So that there's kind of a do not disturb sign goes on the door. That's useful for some people, but you're
Well,
right.
for some
Sometimes you
people,
just
but
can't
a
do
lot
that.
a lot of kids and spouses don't like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have a conversation about it, obviously.
Yes, that's
You
for
don't
sure.
just stick a sign. But yeah, no, when you talk about that, a lot of folks talk about that in sports, that idea of getting in the zone. I remember when I was my initial or first kind of time going through school, I was actually in that traditional path, and doing research and everything. I was going to be a research professor. It turns out that my dissertation advisor died unexpectedly in a plane crash, and that was going to cause me to have to kind of start over. And
Wow.
I decided to walk away, and then I ended up coming back as an unconventional student later on. But I remember when I was doing research like that, and working on, uh, um, I was in an astronomy program, so I'd be working with computers and things like that. And I could go and sit in my office and show up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and there's no windows in the crappy offices they give graduate students. So I
Right.
could look up at my watch and find out it was 7 o'clock at night the next time I looked at it. I had missed lunch, starting to miss dinner, just because I was in
Right.
the zone. I was doing the thing. So, was there any tips or techniques that you used to get in the zone so that you could concentrate like that so that Mack truck driving through wouldn't bother you?
Well, yes, and it's kind of when you stop and you go. I want to talk about that if that's okay.
Yeah,
When
absolutely.
you're in the zone and you're trying to complete the project, do not stop. Try to finish it because it's so hard to restart and get back onto that place that you were before. And I know that was very difficult for me. And so if I ended up doing an extra hour or whatever, I went on and did the extra hour because it was just so difficult trying to pick up
Yeah,
from, I mean, like if you can do a section, complete a section every time you sit down. I mean, of course, the background information and the research section of the dissertation, I mean, you can't do that in a setting, but you can always uh, say, okay, well, today I'm going to get 10 new references. I'm going to go through them. I'm going to sort them out. I'm going to
that's exactly
see.
right. It's important
Right.
to have a goal for each session. Each time you're going to sit down and work on your dissertation, what do you plan on getting done? And occasionally you can learn to adjust your goals as you're going, and so you get better at it. And hopefully you get to the point pretty soon where you hit every goal every day. And that really helps with the focus, with getting in the zone. I think when you sit down, I got to do these 3 things and then I'm done. And if you are in that zone, then if you know what the next 3 things are, maybe you can get 1 or 2 of those done too. Like you said, as long as you've got some time on the back end of your scheduled time to keep going, that could be productive as well.
Right. And the other thing is picking the right method for, quantitative, qualitative, or mixed method. I mean,
Right.
mixed method, I mean, for me personally, uh, it's real difficult because it's like doing 2 dissertations pretty much because you have to come from both sides. But
Folks, I
I,
didn't say it. You heard it. Dr. François said it.
so,
Mixed methods is like doing 2 dissertations. I didn't
yeah,
say it. He did
yeah, it's a
this
little
time.
bit more challenging. You have to use 2 different techniques, 2 different evaluation tools, all that.
Listen,
So
so the
it's
students that work with
really
me, their goal needs to be, I want to get my dissertation done as quickly as possible, because that's what we do here.
right,
If you want to spend a long time working on your dissertation because you want to study all the ins and outs, that's fine. You're an adult. You decide what's important to you. I work with folks who are like, listen, I want to use this doctoral degree and I can't use it until I get this dissertation done. That's who I
right,
work with. All right. So if you come to me and say that's what you want, and you also say you want to do a mixed method study, the answer is just no.
just
Just pick
expect to
one.
add
Pick
on
one.
a year, an extra year or 2 trying to get it done.
Easily.
It's I mean, just for me, I use a quantitative method when I did my dissertation, and for me, I just, after looking at it, because I'm not really a quantitative type of person. I don't
Yeah.
think in numbers and all that. And I think I would have probably been better served doing a qualitative method. And I think my study could have justified that. It probably would have justified using it. But I was told that a quantitative method would get me through the process faster. But it really doesn't help you if you really have to struggle to learn,
Mm.
learn that
So it is
portion.
important to have some of that, I don't know what I'm doing, to get some operational guidance is really helpful
That's
to
right.
break it down, because you don't have to be a quant expert to do a quantitative project, but I agree 100%. It's a lot faster.
Yeah.
Things are a little bit easier right now as we're recording this episode. We're still in this COVID crisis situation. It's late in 2020 right now, and in this environment, qualitative studies are a little bit easier to do than normal because everybody's doing them this way. We're doing a Zoom call right now, and that's the way everybody does their interviews. So that makes it a lot easier. Traditionally, when we're not in this kind of social distancing lockdown kind of environment, we're expecting those interviews to be face to face because you tend to get better commitment, better trust, and just better responses. when you're sitting down with somebody across the table or something of that sort. But that helps a little bit with some of the logistics. Still, though, you're doing a qualitative project. You got to sit down with these folks and talk to every one of them and spend like an hour or more with each one of them, as opposed to a quantitative study. You just tell people, hey, click this link, fill out this form, hit submit, and there's all my data. Much easier from an execution standpoint. And then you just have to understand what the analysis means. It's going to be a lot faster and easier to do, particularly if you get some help with it. But just wrapping your head around it takes a little bit of time. But I'd argue much less time than going over all of those hundreds of pages of transcripts and making sense out of those.
Yeah, wow. And also you have to know your population that you're going to be researching. My dissertation was extended a little bit because of the population. Let me show you real quick. This is my dissertation right here.
Keep it within arm's reach, huh?
If you can see it there, it's a trust in union leaders and a decline in union membership. And so I felt being in a union for about 15 years that it was going to be such an easy population for me to tap into. Little did I know, every time I wrote a letter or contacted someone and said, well, is it okay that I can interview or contact the members and send them a survey? And the answer was no, we can't do it. We can't do it. So it made it really difficult. So what I had to do is I had to go through social media to get individuals to fill out the questionnaire.
So when I talked about planning ahead of time, before you start writing that problem statement or whatever it might be, that's one of the crucial bits is how are you going to get access to these folks? And I don't just mean I know them, I'm sure I can get access to them. No, you know exactly how you're going to get access to them. If you're going to go talk to Bob down at the lodge and get Bob to, send out a bunch of emails for you or something like that, well, go talk to Bob and make sure he's going to do it. Because if he comes back and says no, then what do you do with your study? And like you said, found out it takes some time to recover, to come up with alternate plans. And
it was a rude awakening. I could not believe I worked hand in hand with a lot of the population. And I actually wrote the dissertation. I chose to write it because of the decline in unions, and it really was something that I wanted to do to assist and to help in finding out and understanding why unions were declining to offset that. But I like I said, I had to use other methods to get the information or get access to the population.
And luckily that worked out. So that was it's a really good thing, because we've had students that have come to us before just completely stuck. They have a proposal that's been approved, and then they're trying to figure out how to actually do what they proposed. And either they didn't check to make sure that they could actually get the data that they were thinking they could get, or they didn't even have really a plan in place. And unfortunately, sometimes committees will just approve a proposal. And if I go to take it and I want to go execute this proposal for someone, I have no clue how to do it because there's not actually a plan laid out there. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying I am going to execute anybody's dissertation for them, but it's important for the student to have like a recipe, like a baker. If you wanted to know how to make a chocolate cake, a baker can write down on a card, here's what you're going to need, here's what you do with it, here's how long it's going to take, and then you got a chocolate cake. And you need to be able to do that with your dissertation as well. Here's who I'm going to deal with, here's how I'm going to get in touch with them, here's what I'm going to do to them, and then when I get the answers, this is what I'm going to do to make sense of it. And if you can't do all of that, you're really not ready to move forward, even on writing your proposal, much less trying to defend it and execute a dissertation.
Right, because there is a section in a dissertation that you have to explain how you're going to
Right.
achieve getting to the population and what methods are you going to use to get to them,
That's
and
that's true.
and so and even before you start the research of it, the actual research, that section has to be filled out. So you
And
have
it would
to
be
kind
nice
of
if all committees would insist that the students fill that out because
right,
it's there for your own benefit. It's
right,
really there so that somebody else could reproduce your results if you want to. That's very important in science. We want to be able to, if someone says this is the way it works, someone else is going to say, well, I don't believe you. I'm going to go do it and see if that's the way it works. And so you have to tell them exactly what you did. Or in the case of the dissertation, you start off with a proposal. What are you going to do? In order for them to be able to replicate what you did. And yes, you're right. It would be great if all committees would tell students you have to do that first. But even though it is a section in every dissertation, unfortunately, I've seen lots of proposals that you could not execute on what a person wrote down. There's no instructions. That recipe card, so to speak, just isn't not even there really.
yeah. It's all I can say is you have to go into this understanding that it's like going into the gym. You're going to have to work out because you can't just walk into the gym and just sit around and watch everybody else work out.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
gonna the dissertation is going to require you to really it not only just work but think logically and to think and to put things in the proper order. And
yeah.
I think that's again I have to apply Walden for their work in building the DBA program and some of the other programs that they have, because it they have it in a logic manner
Yes.
of how you should put things together, and it worked for me.
Yeah.
I
Awesome.
was a legacy student because I had surgeries and some other things. So I it took me about I think about like 5.5 years to finish up my dissertation. Um, some of those were rewrites. I think I've rewrote my dissertation at least 30 times, at
Wow.
least, at least. And so if you're not a person that do not like writing over and over again, you got to get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, for
And there's two things there. Number one is, yeah, I have never met a dissertation committee that's approved a first draft ever. So it doesn't matter how good you are, who you are, what you are, that's not going to happen. But the second thing is having some experience with this is what committees are looking for, or when they give you feedback, this is what that feedback actually means, can short circuit that process. Because if you told me that you rewrote your dissertation, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, I would say, yeah, that's kind of the way it is. 30 times is a little much.
well, I'm not saying the whole dissertation. I'm talking about
Okay.
sections of it,
Okay.
going
Different.
through
Okay.
section and
That's
section,
true.
and and yeah, just going through the different sections, trying to get the problem statement right. You have to rewrite that over multiple
No,
times,
that's true. That makes a lot of sense. But you
and
said another important point here, which was some of it was rewrites, but some of it was also, you mentioned surgeries and there's other things. Life doesn't stop when you
right,
enroll in a doctoral degree program. And it's important that you understand when you have difficulties or unexpected things happening in your life, how to keep going in the dissertation process, not to ignore these other things that are happening in life, because those are important. I mean, we've had folks that had to deal with the death of a spouse and things of that sort. It's just horrible, and you have to respect those things and give those time and attention. But if you also are determined and disciplined to keep moving forward with the dissertation process, you can finish it despite the fact that life keeps throwing you curveballs.
oh, absolutely. And the other tool that uh, I even embrace today is the use of Grammarly.
Mm. Yeah.
Grammarly is an excellent tool because a dissertation, let me just tell you, you have some committee members, if that period is not in that right space, if you choose to use a single space or the double space or whatever it is, and one you use it one time one way or another, they will call you on that.
You're right.
and they will have you rewrite it over again, which may take you another, cycle to get your dissertation reviewed.
Just that review is, yeah, and I wish that all committee members would um, pay attention to content first, and then we'll make it look good. You have to write well enough to be understood, but it doesn't have to be APA perfect when you're putting drafts together. But unfortunately, some committee members don't share that view. So tools like Grammarly can certainly help bridge the gap. Grammarly is not going to give you APA perfect, but it'll get you pretty close.
Oh, absolutely. It's a tool that, like I said, I still use today. I encourage, the students that I do teach to look at it at least,
Right.
and see if it's something that is good for now. And because the things that you can solve immediately is better than having a whole bunch of unresolved issues in your dissertation. That's for sure.
True. That's true. Tell me what, as you went through the dissertation process, what about the dissertation itself did you find challenging? Was there any point at which you felt like you were really stuck, and how did you overcome that?
To be honest with you, it was the problem statement that was the most challenging, just trying to figure out where I was going to go. And then I think it was section 3 for Walden, which is the methodology section, because it was challenging because I had to learn about all of this information and running things through and understanding what I was running through, all these different formulas. And so that was challenging. It took me, because I had to pause and learn and then actually do the work. So that's why I kind of, if I was looking back, I probably, a quantitative method would have probably been a little bit easier for me. I mean, personally for me, but a lot of people like the quantitative method, and they find that it's
I'll still contend that the qualitative, what happens with that is it might seem easier to people. People look at think about their statistics class and say, I hated that class. I don't ever want to do that again. And so you think, I'm not going to do a quantitative project. And then you look at qualitative and you're thinking, well, that's basically talking to folks. I'm good at talking with folks. But the problem is that it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of very specific ways of looking at those conversations and making sure those conversations go where you need them to go to get your questions answered. And so there's some skill in that, but there's also some time commitment there. And then the real time commitment comes later, when you take an hour-long conversation with somebody and you write it out longhand, in a transcript, like 20 pages. And then you do that 20 times, and now you've got like this 400-page book that you have to analyze to pull out themes and everything. And it's a very long, labor-intensive process. It might seem a little simpler, but it's a lot more, I'll say, difficult. Just the amount of work you have to do.
Yeah, well, it's always good to, like an organization like yours, to get some coaching when you get to that section. I think that if you really don't, you have to know what you don't know. And you have to, and don't be afraid, or don't be prideful to not ask for help.
I don't know what I'm doing yet is very, very important. I don't know what I'm doing yet. Don't be embarrassed that you don't know what you're doing yet, because you're out there learning how to do it. So really, really important. Well, Dr. François, let's switch gears a little bit, because I'm super interested in this thing you're doing now, Imaginetainment. Tell us about that. Just the name is so cool, but
well, I can tell you about the name. I was sitting with our, we hired in a company to actually do the image of Imaginetainment, And so I was sitting down at a breakfast meeting, and we were trying to, and I said, wait a minute. And we went through a whole bunch of different. She says, well, you kind of have to come up with a name and all that. So I was sitting down. I said, imagine, and I said entertainment, and I said no. I said, how about Imaginetainment? So that's how the name came out.
Yeah.
And but the challenge with that is that Glazier and Ron Howard has a production company called Imagine Entertainment.
Right.
And so when we went to get the name trademark, the trade attorney said, well, you may have a problem with this.
May or may not work.
Yeah, it may not work. You may want to have a substitute name. And it was filed because it has to go through, newspaper for public notice and all that.
Yeah.
And nobody responded back to it. So we kept the name, Imaginetainment. So
Very cool.
That's how that.
So tell everybody what you guys do then.
Okay, we do training, development of projects, and production of projects. And so right now we have a radio station that we're working with. It's a Live 105 mobile radio, and we're producing several talk radio shows. And next year, and we were supposed to start production, but this COVID thing kind of slowed everything down.
Yeah.
Not knowing exactly what, trying to be responsible, and we don't want to be a cause of spreading COVID.
Right.
And so we're looking at next year. We're working on trying to set up how we can do safe film projects. And so we're working on that. And so next year, the audience will probably see one of our first film projects come out next year. So
very cool. Let me know about that, because that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah.
On the radio side, have you guys been doing? Have you guys been able to produce on that side, doing remotes and distance?
Oh yes.
Very cool.
So we have our guests now. Instead of coming into the facility, we actually call them up, and we do radio. That way from their being at home and we're being in a remote location. And so it worked. It's working out actually really better. And come to find out that the quality of recording is also better when it's on the phone. You don't have to worry about ambient noises, around you and all that. So it's been working out
Awesome.
really good. But we have two shows. We have Straight Talk with Dr. Seth, which is dealing with a political show, and then we have The Business of Love, which is based off of a book I wrote, and then we have some other shows that have been on YouTube and all that. So
tell everyone about your book.
The Business of Love. It's basically a relationship book, and from a guy's perspective, and for ladies to see how a guy would think about certain things, and how to successfully engage in a relationship with a guy. But it's been
you can't say we didn't come with instruction manuals anymore.
That's right. Part of the book, we talk about relationship contracts. A lot of times, you get in a relationship and you have maybe an argument about something, and individuals don't write it down. They don't document what the solution was, and so they keep going back and repeating the same thing over again. But if you have a contract and say, "Hey, look, we agreed that this is how we're going to handle it," and and now it's locked in, and you can get over that, so someone can say, well, you didn't say that, or I never agreed to that. Well, yeah, you did. It's there, right?
Yeah.
And we know about how businesses are. Sometimes you can have oh yeah, well, I'm going to deliver you a hundred bananas here, and then you come out there and it's like they only delivered you 50. And oh no, that was so
Yeah, no, you
so
got to get it written down. I
yeah.
remember, oh gosh, I don't remember what it was called, but there was this great movie from the 80s, maybe, with, well, saying great movie, I guess is maybe pushing it, but it was Richard Pryor and Jackie Gleason, I believe. Richard Pryor was moving his family across the country, and Jackie Gleason's walking through the house, and they're talking about all these nice features in the house. And he's talking about this, door and where it came from, an antique hand carved door or something like that. And Jackie Gleason tells him, well, we're taking it with us, and kind of laughs about it and everything. And they were like, okay, fine. And they talked about the beautiful chandelier, and Jackie Gleason kind of gives him a little elbow to the ribs, like, well, we're taking that with us. And finally they go outside in the beautiful pool, and he says again, well, we're going to take it with us. So Richard Pryor shows up, they move in, and all that stuff is gone, including the pool. And he's like, what happened here? This is not the house I saw. And Jackie Gleason is going through the transcript. He's like, well, I said right here, we're taking it with us. And the laughing and the little, little elbow to the ribs did not get into the transcript, but him saying we're taking it with us did.
Right. It's the truth. So I mean, dealing with relationships it's really, again, that's just another element of commitment. You have to be committed to succeed. That's all in a nutshell.
It's not true. Now, how would you credit your doctoral degree with the work that you're doing in Imaginetainment now? Because I know so many of our students say, hey, I had all these opportunities available to me once I graduated. How do you think that doctoral degree helps you with what you're doing now?
Well, it's just, one thing that you will never forget is how to research and how to apply yourself in certain situations dealing with time constraints.
Right.
Learning how to delegate things that may not be in your best interest to take on yourself. And it just it has really just opened my mind that that I'm not this island, that you have to know when to ask for help.
Right.
And but as far as the degree, I have calls all the time, and I may start doing some consulting work with unions, because I do get calls from time to time, and it's so frustrating, because when I was with the union, I would tell them certain things, and they were just like, oh, okay, yeah. And now everything that I told them is coming to fruition, right? So now it's like, okay, I was trying to give you free help there.
Well, I mean, but have you found that when Seth says something, people might not listen, but when Dr. François says it, it's a little bit of a different story?
Oh, absolutely. It's incredible of how it's what I tell people is that you want to have a tool belt. Mm-hmm. And when you have a tool belt, some of those tools you don't have to use. I mean, you may go on a job and you may not need to use a hammer. You may not need to use a drill. But it's always good to have one if you do need it, right? And so, I mean, even individuals that, you may be applying for a job that you really love to do, but it doesn't require a doctorate degree, I mean, so, I mean, you may not want to highlight that you have a doctorate degree. You may just, want to say your master's degree or whatever. But if there's a job that requires you to have a doctorate degree and you don't have one, then you're out. You just, you don't have that. But, I think the doctorate degree is really important as far as if you're an entrepreneur. If you're a builder, the doctorate degree is can help you with the process and understanding of different things that you wouldn't necessarily understand without going through the program.
And I know a lot of people in this audience do identify with that term entrepreneur, but a lot of folks don't. But when we talk about being an expert, they resonate with that term. And it's the same thing. When you're going out there and getting people to utilize your expertise at this level, that is an entrepreneurial endeavor, because there just aren't that many people that operate at that doctoral level. It's 1% of the population. So that's very important, that, like you said, it opens doors when you have that first name doctor.
Right. And what's so interesting, because after you complete your dissertation and it's published, I get these reports like every month about where my dissertation is being utilized, and it's really interesting to see that it's being utilized all over the world.
That's amazing.
For research. And it's really, for me, that makes me feel really good that I didn't put all that time and research into this project, and no one is not going to, and it's just collecting dust somewhere. People are actually utilizing it. Oh,
that is amazing, because we find that most dissertations never get read after you graduate. And I tell students, you need to be okay with that, because the dissertation's job was to get you that degree, and it did its job as soon as you graduated. But if you do find that folks are actually using that work, that's amazing. That's a great extra bonus.
Oh, and the other thing that I wanted to say, just as a helpful hint, just remember that there were individuals before you that did similar researches.
Right.
And so similar research.
There better have been.
Right. So what you want to do is find someone from your university and just kind of look at other dissertations like yours that were already written, so that you can see how they formatted and all that. And believe me, I'm not talking about plagiarism. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm just talking about an understanding of how the process works, to visually see how a completed project would look. And then also, just for the research, if you go to the reference section, you'll find all kind of nuggets of other where other students and research. So you get that reference page, and then you go and you start pulling up these articles and you start researching those articles. And it's just so important. You have to. It's kind of like doing it the hard way or doing it the easier way. It's not an easy way.
There is no such thing as an easy dissertation, but you don't have to make it super hard. Yeah.
At all.
That's right.
But it's there's ways that you can kind of acquire what you need in a place where for me, looking up an article, and I didn't know what I just said until I was finished. Pretty much finished.
Right.
And right at the end, someone told me, it says, "Well, have you looked at other dissertations that were completed that were approved?" See, the word is approved, right? Because you could do a dissertation, but if it's not going to be approved.
That's right.
And so that's why you want to look at other people's dissertations that were approved to make sure that you're going in the right way.
This is one of the things we talk to our students about, is kind of getting in the head space of what is a dissertation, what does it look like, how does it operate, and there are some times when you can do something very, very, very similar to someone else's work, and that can be really, really helpful. Again, it's not plagiarism at all. Science is built in steps and increments, and so taking someone else's work and moving it another inch down the field is perfectly acceptable. And so there's a lot of things like that you can just go to the library and really help yourself out with your dissertation.
Right, and just make sure you don't plagiarize yourself, because that is possible. So,
I I still take umbrage with that. I know some universities are trying to do that, but certainly don't take a paper that you wrote for another class and try to copy and paste it into your dissertation. You got to at least update it, rewrite it, that sort of thing. But yeah, knowledge that you came by,
and
worked
cite it.
to gain. It's very common for you to reuse that, even if you're a professional researcher, because a lot of times these guys are working on the same thing for decades. And so, yes, of course, they're going to reuse a lot of the same ideas. That's what makes them experts, is that they have a set of ideas that their work is based on. But and universities will, some of them I know, will give you trouble about that if you're too cavalier with using your own previous work.
Right. And I think another key thing, because when you get to the research section, you have to know how to synthesize
Oh,
all
yeah,
the information that you collected.
that's true.
And it's just not just, taking something and putting it in there. You have to actually explain why this information is in a short interval period of time.
I like to tell folks that you're telling your story and you're bringing in little pieces of evidence, little nuggets of support along the way. The story should not be he said this and she said that and they did this. That's their story. It's your story. What do you want to tell about the direction the research has gone in literature review, or about what you have done when it comes to your results, or about what it means when it comes to your conclusions? It's got to be your story, but then you bring along little pieces of support along the way. I'm never walking down that street again. It was dark, it was scary, and I'm not going down that street again.
Right.
Jessica, don't you remember you were walking down that street last week and you thought some guy was following you? Well,
right.
That wasn't Jessica's story I just told. That was my story, but I got a little support, right? And that's what you got to do when you're synthesizing this information, as you said.
Yeah, that's right. Joe said he was walking down that street and the same thing happened to him. So, hey, and then Bob said, he walked down the street and something fell on his head too. So, you can conclude that you walk down the street, something's going to fall on your head.
It's not safe, right?
That's right.
But the point is, you got to talk about why I'm not walking down the street and the decisions I've made and this
Right.
sort of thing, and supporting it with those other stories, not he said, she said, and that sort of thing.
That's right. That's right.
But this has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. Tell folks if they wanted to get in touch with you, if they wanted to work with Imaginetainment, if they just wanted to hear what's going on your radio shows. Tell folks how they can best get in touch with you.
The Imaginetainment.org is the website. Dr. Seth at Imaginetainment is my .org is my email. Live 105.5 mobile radio station is the radio station that the shows are on Tuesdays at 8:00. And we're actually updating the website now for classes and things of that nature for next year. So yeah, I mean, they can keep in contact with us through the website and see what we're getting ready to, what we're getting into next year. So
that is awesome. And then the name of the book?
It's called The Business of Love. It's a woman handbook for a successful relationship, The Business of Love. Remember, it's a guy's perspective. Don't get mad at me after you read it.
So that's great. And where can they find that?
Amazon.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just Dr. Seth. Well, I wasn't a doctor at the time when I wrote the book. So Seth François and a woman's handbook of a successful relationship, and they can just pull it up and it'll come right up.
Awesome. And I would encourage you, maybe a second edition is due at this point, so that it's Dr. Seth, this time around, because that will certainly help with the authority. Again, one of the things we do is we work with students who, or doctors, folks who have earned their doctoral degree, and other experts about expanding their authority by getting a book out there. And best thing you can do is have the first name doctor and put that as the author byline for your book. So the powerful combination.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for allowing me to be on your show and
Oh, you're
inviting
welcome.
me out. And
The audience is
that
thanking me for having you, because it's been a great conversation.
I had a lot of fun today, uh, for me, I am, you know, if there's ever and I'm, ever a time that you may need me to talk to a student or something like that, I'll be more than happy to kind of
I
let
appreciate
them
that.
know the challenges that they're in for. But it's a lot of success. I mean, the best thing about finishing is that you finished. It there is no better reward than just finishing
Yeah.
and getting it done. And you
One,
can
one
put
of
that in
my
your holster and keep walking proud.
one of my students said, when I asked him what the best thing about graduating was, he runs his own business. His business grew like crazy after he graduated because of that additional authority. And I asked him what the best part of graduating was, and he said, "Dr. Strickland, I got my life back." And that's how he put it. And I was like, man, that's it. Another
Well,
student,
he,
this was
he did
before
say,
the lockdown. Another student was like, "Hey, now that I've defended, I'm going to go to the football game this weekend, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it." Because there's some things we do anyway, but you feel guilty if you're
well,
not working on your dissertation.
there is a pocket of time that you're going to have. It's like sleeping in a bed in
Yeah,
one spot. There's going to be like an indention, in the bed, and you have to figure out how to fill that void out
right. I'm
because
just going to have more time to know what to do with.
it's different, right?
I should be working on my dissertation right now. No, I shouldn't. I graduated.
That's right. That's right. And sometimes I have these dreams, and it's like, oh, you have to get to class, and I'm like, wait a minute. I wake up,
No,
I'm
you
like,
don't.
wait a minute, I already finished. So yeah,
Takes a little while to step into those shoes. Even after you've earned it, it takes a little while to own
that,
it. So
that's it. And then trying to get used to people. Like for me, it was really difficult for people to come up to me and say, "Hey, how you doing, Dr. Seth?" or whatever.
yeah,
I mean, they don't even call me by my last name. They just say Dr. Seth, my
yeah,
first name, so which I'm good with. But it was an adjustment for me,
yeah.
because it's I'm so used to people calling me by my first name or my last name.
Right.
So, but
I,
it's good. I'm getting used to it.
I had this conversation, I think, on this podcast before, but those who knew you when, you're still Seth, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But to
That's right.
everybody else, it's now Dr. François, and it's different for you a whole lot more so than it is for them, because they've always known you as Dr. François. You're the one who grew up with Seth, and who's just gotten to this point where you have this doctoral title for the past few years. So yeah, it's a big transition for you as well. And one of the things I'll say, not to you specifically, but just for folks in general, is because people are going to treat you differently when you have your doctoral degree, make real sure. Dr. Seth was saying, "I know what I know and I know what I don't know," a little earlier. Make real sure about that, because people are going to believe what you say. That doctor credential carries a lot of weight. And if you say something, people are going to believe you. So make sure you're being respectful and honoring that credential that you've earned by telling people what the things that you know, go for it. But those things that you don't know, be really, really careful, because even if you're just guessing and working things out, a lot of times people won't appreciate that. I don't mean they'll be mad at you. I mean, they won't understand that that's what you're doing. And they'll just think that what you're saying is the gospel, because a lot of folks don't know a lot of people with PhDs. There aren't a lot of us out there.
Yeah, you have a lot of responsibility as a doctor to really to present yourself in the right way and to give the right information and
Yeah,
not to guess at things anymore. You
right.
can't you just can't guess at things anymore. You have to know, and don't be afraid to say, hey, look, I have to get back with you on that.
Right.
I don't have the answer right now.
And I'll say it's
And
okay to guess at things or to work things out with people. Just be very, very clear that that's what you're doing. Say, I don't know, let's think this through. Do you think it might work this way? Do you think it might work that way? I'm just talking this through with you. I don't know, but I can help you think about it, because one of the things I learned as a doctor is how to think through some of these things.
oh
Um,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's another skill that a lot of people don't have. Trust me, that's a skill that a lot of people don't have these days.
It's probably one of the best skills that you can have is
Yeah.
to see things. But it's so funny, and this is my last story to you. But when I was a kid, I used to write, and I had the worst penmanship. And from my teachers to friends and parents, all that, they said, you write like a doctor. You need to be a doctor. And somehow that stuck with me. And so now when I write something really horrible and people can't read it, I'm like, hey, I'm a doctor. So, so,
There it is.
so I'm supposed to write bad.
I either had to fix my penmanship, or I had to get my doctoral degree.
That's right. That's right. So
And when you saw that booth, that was it. That was fate coming knocking on your door, saying,
yeah, problem solved, right?
your handwriting still looks pretty bad.
oh, it's probably worse. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
funny because when I write, I type, because when I write, sometimes I go back and I'm like, wait a minute,
What did I say?
So,
Yeah. I now that the iPad has the pencil that you can write with, I will do that some, particularly when I'm taking notes. I'll do that some, but usually I don't pick up a pen or pencil except to actually sign my signature if I'm signing a check or something else like that. That's it. Even contracts, I don't even have to pick up a pen for that because my signature is already in the computer.
right.
But yeah, that's handwriting's not as much a problem now, I guess, as it used to be.
Right. It's interesting because cursive writing they don't even teach in some
Don't teach
schools
anymore.
now. So
My kids don't know how to do it. So my son was filling out a form so that he could try out for the swim team. And he writes his name like, I don't even know what to say. I don't want to say something that's going to insult someone, but it was not a signature. Let's suffice it to say that. And he's like, you got to teach me to write a signature. I'm like, you just got to work on it. So sit down and do it a few times. Find something that works for you, and then that's your signature. But he was like, not printing, but kind of, they didn't teach him cursive. So he was kind of printing, but trying to do it a little fancy.
well, I want to just congratulate you and give you some kudos, for working to get students through the doctorate program, uh, because again, it's something that it really takes a community, even the family at home, adjusting to what you're trying to do, trying to get knowledge somewhere else, which your organization comes in to help people to really understand what they're doing, that they're not just spinning their wheels. And so I give you kudos for that.
Well, I do appreciate that. And it does take a lot of support, and I'm glad that we can provide some of that. I've talked in another episode about the different types of support that you need to be successful. So I'll just use that as a shameless plug to go listen to other podcast episodes if you're interested in that. But it's true. There's a lot of different types of support that you need. And like I said, I'm glad that we can provide some of that, and some of our students graduate a lot faster than they would otherwise. That's something I'm really happy about, because I truly believe that folks who are called to a doctoral degree they do that because they're called to serve a higher purpose, that serve at a higher level. And that doctoral degree is what enables them to do that. And so if I can get you out there making the world a better place in your own way, then I'm making it a better place in my own way. That's really why I like to do this. There's a lot of other things you can do to make money out there in the world, but this is something I feel helps people do good things for other people. So
it just seemed like when you get to the doctorate level, there's a certain passion that you have for what you want to do.
that's true.
And I guess the process helped you to understand if that passion is something real, or if it's something that you need to really figure out,
Right.
if you really want to do it because of the time that you're spending on it. So it definitely it clears your mind to put you on the path that you really, want to be on. So.
And so the important thing is, while you're working through your dissertation, try to keep those passions in check, be professional, be detached, get the dissertation done, because Dr. Seth's right. Once you've finished it, then all those things you're passionate about, you don't need anybody's permission anymore to pursue those things. Opportunities will come, knocks on the door, seats at the table, all of that sort of thing. So just get it done.
Oh, absolutely. And again, thank you for having me on your show.
You're welcome, Dr. Seth. It's been great. I've enjoyed talking with you. I've enjoyed learning from you. I want to remind folks again, they can reach you at, it was Dr. Seth at Imaginetainment.org. Is that right?
Yes.
And the website is Imaginetainment.org. You got the radio shows. Where do they reach out to you if they want to listen to the radio shows once again?
Just go, it's Live 105.5 mobile radio.
Okay.
And we are actually building some other stations right now that's going to be all talk radio.
Awesome.
And so we're looking at trying to do that and trying to expand that. And we want, because of the direction of where people are utilizing their handheld units to do things. So we're building productions that people can have in the palm of their hand. So they don't have to sit down, watch TV. They can have it right there.
It's right there. So. Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much, Dr. Seth, for joining me here today. I'll remind folks once again that this episode has been brought to you by Dissertation Done. If you're getting ready to work on your dissertation and you want to be proactive and get through it as quickly as possible, if you're struggling through this dissertation and you want someone to help you push through and get you to graduation, check us out at dissertationdone.com/done. And if you want to take your expertise to the next level, like Dr. Seth has done with his book, consider going to dissertationdone.com/book and join me where we take small groups of authors through the process from a blank page to being a published author. It happens a lot faster than you might think it would, and it will change your life, being a published author and having that expertise, and also having the first name doctor for the author byline. It's amazing. So I hope we can help you one of those two ways. And in the meantime, Dr. Seth, thank you so much for joining me. I had a blast. And for everybody else, go out and live your unconventional life. Have a great day.
This has been An Unconventional Life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe now to keep getting inspirational stories of unconventional lives as soon as they're released. Until then, go out and live your best unconventional life.